they picked up something that they hadn't thought about before and are grateful for the opportunity. But these such meetings as this are not for the purpose of converting anybody. In fact, the Prophet himself was told, find it in the Quran, that it was not his mission to convert anybody. It was his mission to simply announce a certain amount of information, and whether or not anybody listened was not the point of the whole exercise. The point was it had to be said. It's as the Bible says, Jesus is reported to have said, that if he didn't come to tell the truth, well then the rocks and the stones would speak out and tell the truth. It had to come from somewhere. It had to be announced, so that you don't have a case of the human being saying, but I never heard the truth. You know, it has to be announced someplace.
Very good.
Does anyone have another question? I have a question. You seem to imply that the Quran talked, I think, either mostly or only about God as in what he does, or from, as you put it, from points of view. I think as opposed to God as in the nature of God. Did I pick up the right distinction?
Well, no, we're not being told in the Quran some kind of mystic sacred secrets. If there is any new information in the Quran, and there is, it is information that is not of a mysterious, mystic kind of a nature. It's information that is the same as the usual kind of information that we know about. As, for example, some of them have been since historically verified. I mean, the Quran talks about a city called Iram, which you won't find mentioned anywhere else in history. So it has revealed a secret. I mean, to this age, we read about a city named Iram that the Quran says existed in such and such a place and went through such and such an upheaval and so on. About 10 years ago, historical records were found referring to this city of Iram. You see, so it was secret knowledge in the sense that a lot of people didn't know this, or the world at large didn't know this. But it is not some kind of mystic knowledge. It's knowledge like other knowledge. It's just historical knowledge, and it shows up. Or the Quran talks about the disobedient wife or the disobedient son of Noah. It relates in more detail the episode between Moses and Pharaoh and so on, which you don't find in any other historical sources. So it's new knowledge in that sense, but it's only historical knowledge. It's human knowledge, what we're used to seeing. But it didn't tell us something like you'll get if you're a Rosicrucian or something like this, where you can send away for a kit that will tell you how to open the secrets of your mind, and you'll know something that human beings never knew before, or something in some plane above scientific historical knowledge. It doesn't deal in that kind of thing. Not that I've ever found, anyway.
The answer to this question would be helpful to the Muslim population who don't know much about the Christians or Christianity. We are surrounded by priests and bishops who seem to be committed to Christianity or seem to be educated enough to reach the conclusion about the oneness and the absoluteness of God. What is missing in their life or thinking that they cannot reach that conclusion?
I suppose you couldn't pin it down to one definite kind of item. Everybody has his own problems, his own hang-ups that hold him back. I could illustrate by examples. In 1969, I lived in a city of about 40,000 people out west, and I studied the Bible and arrived at some conclusions that the church taught one thing and different information was in the Bible. I got out the yellow pages of the phone book and I looked up every priest and minister in that city, went to them one at a time, opened the Bible. I said, why does your church say A when the Bible says B, and so on? And I got 3 different kinds of reactions. Some people got quite angry, wouldn't discuss the issue. So I suggest they have some kind of a psychological problem. Other people would discuss the issue to some extent and then tell me that I was looking at something too deeply, that I should stop at a certain point and not go on. And I had a few, but not very many, a few say, you're absolutely right. But it didn't change them in any way. I would suggest they also have a psychological hang-up. And one priest told a woman who was doing the same thing that I was doing, told her, you're right about a certain point she was making. that the church taught something that wasn't true. He said to her, "You're right, but you have to give ignorant people a fear of God." In other words, we keep this doctrine because it keeps people frightened, and if we told them the real thing, they wouldn't like it. Now, that's by all means, that's an exception to the rule, that a man would be that honest to say that. But at the same time, how he goes on living his life that way, knowing that that's the business he's in, I don't know. They've got a real difficulty psychologically inside. There are some circuits aren't connected in the brain that lets a person live that way. But I suspect it starts with something small and it grows. You know, if you find it easy to steal a few pennies where you see it, pretty soon you find it easy to steal a few dollars, and so on. You develop an immunity where your conscience doesn't bother you anymore, and I suspect that happens. Now, I cannot make a blanket statement to say that's what's the problem with priests and ministers and so on, because some of them try very hard to reconcile their beliefs, you know, to say that I have a logical foundation for this, but they always seem to stop short of continuing the process. I was just telling my friend on the way over here tonight about an example, and the publication is easily enough accessible. The Catholic Church has opened an office or Department of Islamic Affairs, and they have very much over the years changed their attitude about Muslims. One of the popes recently, and it must have been Paul the VI, two back, said that Muslims were our brothers, and because he said they worship the same God that we worship. Of course, they have a lot of difficulties in the meantime, but they opened an office of Islamic Affairs in the Vatican to study this sort of thing. And there is a publication that they released only a couple of years ago called, A Basis for Dialogue Between Christians and Muslims, printed by the Catholic Church. And among very many interesting statements in there, they make one statement, they relate one historical detail, and you'll probably find this quite humorous, the Muslim will, that in the 15th century there was a priest who was attracting a large following with his doctrine, and he was teaching about the Trinity, and he was very popular, and the church tried to tell him, what you're teaching about the Trinity is not quite correct. There's error in it. But he became so popular that in order to correct the error, they called the Vatican Council. It was the Second Council of Trent, and it met in 1450, I believe it is, about the middle of the 15th century. And they discussed the nature of God and what is He, and so on and so forth. And their conclusion was issued in a statement which was then to be the measuring point of orthodoxy, so that a priest would look at that and say, if I believe that, then I belong in the church. If I don't believe that, then I'm in error. And what was their conclusion but? They said, there is God, and there is a reality which is God, and that reality is unique. That reality is absolute. That reality did not father anyone, nor was it